And when you pull all these levers with being incredible, vacuum packed, then boom, everything is big, bulky, veiny, ripped, shredded, grainy, and that's
Right.
And regardless who I was up against, my physique was unique because nobody else could pull those levers.
Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 65 of the #1 bodybuilding podcast in the United Kingdom. And I am your host, Coach Colt. It's cutting season for most of us, so if you're like me and haven't utilized protein-sparing modified fasting, it's a helpful tool for anyone who's been keto carnivore for long and hit a weight loss plateau. In other words, being healthy is awesome. Yeah, but let's see some abs this summer though, right? So I've been receiving lots of questions about this fat loss technique that I've been unfamiliar with in the past. So lately I've taken a really deep dive into it, gone into lots of different YouTube videos and Google searches, peer-reviewed studies, and so stuff that I really want to discuss with Rich right now. So I want to see what all the hype's about. Anyway, I'm going to run my entire contest prep outline by Coach Rich today and answer your questions along the way. Rich, how have you been the last couple of days since Carnivoreathon, mate?
Yes, awesome, my man. What an incredible 24 hours. It's surprising how exhausting it is just to sit there and pay attention, because it's not just a case of sitting there. You need to be 100% in the moment and listening and processing information. But yeah, an incredible event. And you were a guest on the 24-hour Carnivoreathon. So for any of those listening who haven't watched or listened to the Carnivoreathon, check that out, because we had an incredible, I think you were on for an hour, Colt, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that went quick, didn't it? But yeah, all good. Full 24 hours without eating. Oh, in fact, I'm lying. I did. I indulged a little bit. I had some beef and lamb around 3 a.m. So that was probably 18 hours into the 24, maybe. But I went to work the next day. I even went for a 10K run at 6 p.m. before going to sleep later that night. So I could not have done that on carbohydrate. The only way that this was possible is through living a carnivore-based lifestyle.
Wow, that's wild. So you went for a run on Sunday or the day after Sunday, sorry.
Monday, yeah.
Monday. Oh, okay. I went for, I don't know, probably about an 8 or 9K run between church services. It was because I was playing bass for two services right before Carnivoreathon, and so a couple of things to where it's like, like my the way that I was performing that day throughout the entire day basically was really important. And so the day before, I made sure to have lots of basically just lots of beef and cooked it as little as possible, and so that I would get as good of night's sleep as possible, and basically fasted most of the day. But yeah, between services, just to clear my head and go get those endorphins, like you and I always talk about. It's addictive, but yeah, I got back from it, and my performance was a lot better after that. And then came into Carnivoreathon, just kind of like listening to the guy right before me was incredible. Never heard his name before, but then being able to hang out a little bit with you guys and talk with Jake Thomas in particular afterwards, it was just such a treat too. It's just such an awesome day from start to finish. So thanks for including me to be a part of it, man.
Hey, thanks for being a part. It was absolutely incredible. Incredible 24 hours. Some amazing speakers, such as yourself, but thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, well, thanks so much. So we shall read our podcast review and listener success story and then jump into the meat for the week. So our podcast review of the week is from, I don't know who it's from. It's anonymous, actually. But somebody on Spotify wrote in earlier this week from session number 13, actually in response to last year's Carnivoreathon, which was 2023. So that was our recap on that. We also talked about elimination strategies and when to use variety. So thanks a lot for writing in. That was a blast from, excuse me. Yeah, so I just want to say thanks a lot for writing in. That was a blast from the past. Thanks for listening to last year's Carnivoreathon. The second annual was a couple days ago, and I think it was just as good, if not better. So our listener inspiring success story, LISS. I don't want to scare any of our listeners. That does not have anything to do with cardio. It's an acronym that stands for Listener Inspiring Success Story. So I'm going to read off an Instagram post from our client, Ashley from Delaware. Her account is at carnivore at waifu on Instagram. So I'll plug that in the show notes. So she said, let's talk about this. I didn't even realize how many inches I had lost since starting my fat loss journey with Colt Milton and Rich. I have been stalled at the same weight for 2 months now. I thought that was it for me because I have thyroid and adrenal problems, currently working with those with a doctor. I only realized this because I ordered a swimsuit bottoms online and ordered a medium. It was the same weight, so I assumed that the measurements would be so I assumed that the measurements would be the same as the last time that I measured, which my waist was about 9.5 inches. Wrong. So she lost 18 pounds over the course of these 6 months, and she lost 5 inches around her waist. So basically, she couldn't be happier. Thanks a lot, Ashley. You rock. The carnivore community is growing across the globe. The more that we all share what's working for us, the more that we learn and grow from each other.
Absolutely incredible and super inspirational. It's these stories that make the difference. I think when you and I are preaching the same message day in, day out, it almost falls on deaf ears. But when somebody new comes along and they reap the rewards, of the lifestyle, it's almost like a new pebble in the pond. And then these ripples start to ripple out. And that's how we affect other people, because, our friends and family will see that, and then that will knock on to the next person. And this is how we make a difference, isn't it? So what an incredible story. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. And well done, Ashley. Cool. Man, have you been the last couple? Have you been the last couple days though? Have you been training a lot? Have you been running a lot? Have you been just like I don't know. I feel like after Carnivore-thon, it's kind of a time where we all catch our breath and just kind of reinvent ourselves, right?
Yeah, it took its toll. I went into the 24 hours feeling tired. Lots going on. As you know, same as you, I'm self-employed, working, 7 days a week, long hours. It's tough work. So I went into the 24 hours.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to ask if you did exogenous ketones throughout the day. I know that's
I did.
something that you typically
and
do, right?
this is what I have there.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see, but there's no coffee. I'm still coffee free, by the way. I did.
Wow. Okay.
Still coffee free. Exogenous ketones and C8 powder, which, as you know, I make. I'm a manufacturer of them in the UK.
Sure.
I couldn't have. I say I couldn't have. I mean, they were a fantastic tool, because a few times throughout the 24 hours, I felt like I was starting to flail, and a quick injection of, exogenous ketones. And by injection, I don't mean a physical one. I mean, it was. Although that might be worth trying one day. Yeah, a quick top up of some exogenous ketones, and they really made a world of difference. It's just instant, pure, clean energy for the brain. What many would argue there is, where we live the lifestyle, we're producing ketones anyway, which is true. But, I'm still human. But what people don't realize about ketones is that they are natural. They're created from two forms of bacteria. And all we do when we take an exogenous form is just flood the body with higher ketones, with a higher ketone level. These ketones are there, available for energy for the brain, the body, and the heart. And it just allows you that little bit extra. They worked wonders for me. Absolutely incredible. But what a fantastic 24 hours. Stephen was, an absolute trooper. But it was tough. It was so difficult. There was one point during the 24 hours that I remember in particular that I struggled. Sabrina Salt was on, and I was listening to the information that she was giving. I was taking in. I could hear the information that she was giving, but nothing was registering. I was watching and listening, and then Stephen asked me a question, and I just realized in that second that nothing that she had said for the whole 30 minutes prior hadn't registered, because it was almost as if I was in micro sleep. So I took some ketones at that point, and there everything changed, and the dynamic of that conversation changed in the second half. But that was the only time that I felt, yeah, but that's the only time I felt ever so slightly out of my depth because I just couldn't. It's as if somebody was telling me something that I didn't understand yet. You know, it was as if somebody was speaking a different language to me, you know, but my brain just couldn't function. After that, you know, it was a different story. Everything sort of kicked in, but it did take its toll. A couple of days after that, I've noticed that I felt, you know, fatigued. I other than the run that I did on that Monday, I haven't done any training since. Uh, you know, committing 24 hours to the Carnivoreathon is time extensive. So I've been catching up on work. So I've been doing nothing but work and research. Something else that I've begun doing recently is I've started researching molecular biochemistry, just to further deepen my understanding, you know, of the body. The learning never ends, and you know it's an incredibly
Amen.
complex subject. But
Yep.
you know it's all for the greater good. And once that's done, it'll be something else. But you know, I don't have to do those things in the night. I could just put my feet up and chuck Netflix on, but I'm there, you know, going through the textbooks, researching, trying to better understand so, you know, I can relay better information to our listeners, you know, our followers. But it did take its toll, but we're back. We're here. It's Friday. We're recording, and I'm feeling good.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, I'm glad that we're starting this off talking about exogenous ketones actually, because that's something that I want to talk a little bit more extensively a little bit later. Before we get there, though, the brand recommendations. What do you recommend? You have exogenous ketones with Keto Pro, right?
Yeah, spot on. So I manufacture these. I'm UK based. In fact, I think last time I checked, I'm one of only 2 brands authorized to distribute this in the UK. There are other brands doing it, but they shouldn't be. But ours is what I regard as being one of the best available. And the reason I say that is that I formulated it. So it's, I mean, it's easy for me to say, but I haven't taken someone else's formula and just copied it. I've you know, extensively researched other formulas and ratios in particular of the salts involved. You know, the type of BHB, because there are different types. And we've formulated this through 18 months of testing on myself and a couple of other people that work with the business. And this we believe to be the superior one. I believe that I've formulated an even better one, but we can't afford to put that into production yet. That's a project for next year. But in the States, brands in the States that I would recommend that are clean. So there are a few that I'm familiar with that some I would recommend and some that I wouldn't. So I'm not going to put anyone else's brand down. So I'll recommend the brands that I know that are incredibly clean. One is called Real Ketones. So they're a clean brand. And when I say clean, all of these brands will have some form of flavoring in. And we can't really get away from that if you know, through an oral. You can go down deeper down the route and go for an ester, but they don't taste very nice. They're incredibly expensive. And I think this is by far a cheaper option. Real Ketones is one. Perfect Keto is another brand that I used to stock in the UK. Until we had issues getting that brand in. Another one is called Prove It. Now, Prove It is the closest to ours, except Prove It is a lot more expensive. But again, you know, they are a good brand. Those are the 3 that I'd recommend in the States. Now, having said that, what I would also add is that the price difference between mine and the Prove It brand is quite extensive. And they are pretty much the same product, bar my ratio of electrolytes is what I believe to be a better ratio. So with import costs, you may still be cheaper importing mine, but you'll have to check this. You know, it's going to differ depending on where you are based, you know, throughout the States. But those are the brands available there that I would recommend. There are others that I'm unfamiliar with, but these are the ones that I've tried myself personally. I've had you know, interactions with people who work and are involved with these businesses. So I know, you know, what the ethos is in regards to quality and ingredients. But yeah, just put that out. I haven't used any of those for a while, mine. So if anything's changed since then, but when I was speaking with these brands, because I've worked with all three of those brands previously at some point, and I would recommend those over anything else, from my knowledge. So I'm not familiar of any other brand out there that I've personally tried that I could put my name to. That's not to say that there aren't, but I don't know any personally. But take a look and see what you think.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Rich, for sharing all of that. I thought that was particularly respectful to how you didn't put any of your competitors down. For those that are listening that are curious, we do have a shared spreadsheet that is entitled all of the worst ketogenic suppliers that we hate. And we can share this document. I'm just kidding. We don't have a document that says that.
So, maybe we should. Maybe we should.
Yeah. If you want in on this document, it's going to cost $5, and we're going to have like a little club.
Like
okay. So, in terms of how exogenous ketones and how just like ketosis in general helps you perform better mentally, like if you're speaking, if you're in my case a musician. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of that and share a recent testimonial, but this was last night. No, it was 2 nights ago. Sorry, last couple days have been a blur, man. We've been so busy over here. But our last band rehearsal, I'm in a heavy metal band for those that don't know, but our lead singer and our drummer have both been, I would say 95% strict carnivore for, let's see, the singer, close to a year off and on. The drummer, 2 or 3 months ago. I'm not going to get into detail, but things are good in terms of, like reproductive life. So that's one of the first things that you notice. That's one of the first things that I think a lot of guys notice when they get on the carnivore diet for a while. Just the elevated saturated fats that they're getting in that they weren't getting before. The lower fiber, that helps a lot with that too. But anyway, it's just kind of changed all of our lives. So I don't know. It's just one more thing that all of us together as a band have a lot more in common. So it kind of helps like the chemistry of the band. But all of us in particular feel like it's helped us to perform better and I don't know, working out and let me put it this way: working out fasted and working out with food in my stomach, always night and day difference. I hate working out with any food in my stomach. Always have. That's carnivore, not carnivore. It doesn't matter. It's just I don't want my blood flow going to my digestive system, right? I want my blood flow going to my muscles so that I can work out. And I feel like I do that best when I'm when I'm fat adapted and in a ketogenic state. Same thing for some reason when I'm playing music. Like I'm just not with it if I have food in my stomach. Like even if I like if it's after lunch or something, like I don't know, my mental clarity just isn't there. It's not crisp. But if I'm fasted, and especially if I haven't had food for, it doesn't take that long, but like just nothing within the last 3 or 4 hours, that's when I can play the best, and I know that I'm in ketosis then. And both our drummer and our lead singer, they're kind of experiencing the same thing. So the last rehearsal that I showed up to actually it was Monday, and both of them were like, "Hey man, we've been carnivore the last couple of days, and like I'm feeling better, man. Like I've been so strict." I just was about to start crying. I'm like, I'm so proud of you guys. So our first listener question is from Hikmat Jwanroy. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, sir. From Dubai, asked me this morning via Instagram an hour ago. So I thought this question was actually a good one for today. Hello, friend. How are you? I hope that you and your sweet family have joy and happiness. I have a question regarding CICO, or CICO is how we've been pronouncing it lately. Calories in, calories out. So my question is, I thought of calories in, calories out when I when I first heard that Coca-Cola, excuse me, how did calories in, calories out come around? Was it Coca-Cola that brought it? Like, why is everybody so into tracking calories when it's something that doesn't work? That's probably the biggest question that you and I get asked, Rich. And so I just think it's something good to kind of revisit. But he says the second question is, if we don't use calories in, calories out for my patients, and for your clients, then what would be the best alternative? So I think what he's asking is, if you don't track with calories, then what do you track with? you and I both track with macros, and sometimes we get criticized by other coaches that are big fans of tracking calories, which you and I are not. And so I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that, and maybe like how you would answer that question.
Yeah, fantastic question. I mean, look, when it comes to calories, and I know that this is something that you are incredibly knowledgeable in. It's a calorie was invented as a measurement of heat, and originally to estimate the power to move a steam train. We've mentioned previously about how we do this through the machinery of the bomb calorimeter, which I was educated by with Professor Barkay, and I'm sure that's a similar thing with yourself. But this is a measure of photons, and photons have no mass. Therefore, any number of photons have no mass. So how can something that has no mass allow you to gain or lose weight? So that's one thing in regards to the caloric value. The other thing when it comes to calories is that there is a percentage of error in regards to the calories that is written on a packet of something by 20%. So that's a considerable room for error. Now, that said,
definitely,
it is the only mechanism or metric that we have in regards to measuring energy. Now, you and I use macros. I think macros is a better way. I don't think the use of using calories to track whether you gain or lose weight is a bad thing if your diet is the same every day. But even then, what we don't account for is, all the neat movements, all the tapping of the fingers and the twitching of the legs. And, these are things that, and the thought processes, a lot of the energy that we use is used in the brain. So, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to track accurately. But if you were consuming the same food every day and you were not moving in the right direction, then knowing that eating less of that food is going to allow you to lose more weight. So in simple context, if you were tracking the calories from that, then that would allow you to lose weight. But, I try not to get caught up on the calories, because if there are differences in meals, then the caloric value from pasta or muesli is far different to the caloric value from a piece of beef. And the main reason for this is carbohydrates are going to elicit an insulin response. Insulin upregulates lipoprotein lipase, which breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cells. So insulin stores fat. As a double kick in the teeth, it blocks hormone-sensitive lipase. So it blocks our body's ability to burn fat. So it's biologically impossible to burn fat when insulin is elevated. Now, the problem with this is, in a state of insulin resistance, insulin doesn't just come up and come back down. It remains elevated for prolonged periods of time, which makes it incredibly difficult to burn body fat or metabolize, oxidize fat, I should say, because we shouldn't use the term burn, really, should we? But again, it's context that people understand. For us to lose that body fat is incredibly difficult while insulin is elevated. And what we're told is to consume, little and often, and people tend to consume lots of meals throughout the day. So if your meal is high in carbohydrate between meals and your insulin hasn't dropped back down, then you're still in fat burning mode. You never get down to the point where you're in beta oxidation and burning fat for fuel. So that's one aspect. The other is the lectin effect. So lectins will bind to insulin receptors, and they can signal a 5 times higher insulin response, which in basic sense, and it doesn't always translate as simple as this, but 500 calories from
and that's why you cut out coffee, right? Super high in lectins. Sorry.
So coffee, I tell you what, we'll get to the coffee now. But the lectins in muesli, for example, if we looked at the caloric value of 500 calories, that's going to have a 5 times higher impact than 500 calories from bacon and eggs. So it goes well beyond the caloric value. We need to understand that weight gain and weight loss is an endocrine system. It's an endocrine problem. It's controlled by
I was
our
hoping
hormones.
you were going to say that.
So it is hormonal. Right. If we're in a state of being highly insulin sensitive, then it's far easier to lose body fat. So this comes back down to macros. I mean, you can It's incredibly easy to track the macronutrient ratios of food that we eat because, typically if you're carnivore, you're eating very little carb. Now, carb isn't the enemy per se. There's carbs in everything. So we say that things are carb-free. Organ meats contain glycogen. The fresh meats, even fresh muscle meats contain some form of glycogen. But they're not a problem. They're not a problem because they're incredibly low. Our bodies are designed to take in low amounts of carbohydrates, but we're not designed to take in high amounts constantly. So let's move carbohydrate out of that scenario for 1 second, and then we look at the two most important macronutrients, and that's protein and fat. If we look at every cell in the body, let's look at the average cell. The average human cell, if we look at it by weight, 70% of that cell is water. Beyond that, so after that 70%, we're left with 30. Out of that 30%, 18% is protein. And then the next one down is lipid at 5, and then polysaccharides at 2. So the predominators within every cell in the body is protein and fat. So even if we look at bone is mineralized protein, minerals and protein. So that should suggest that we need protein and we need fat. So if the polysaccharides are the lowest amount of the cell, we need those the least. And we know we can make glucose through gluconeogenesis, as all of your listeners are aware of. So protein and fat. So if we prioritize protein and fat, every animal protein in nature comes with fat as nature intended. Yes, there are leaner cuts, but basically, if we consumed the animal as a whole, that would be a mixture of protein and fat, and roughly a 50-50 ratio. It is slightly different to this, but I mean, it's pretty close. It'll be somewhere around 55-45 or 60-40 grams of protein to fat, but it's pretty close to equal numbers. An egg, for example, is around 6 grams of fat, 5 grams of protein, and yes, it does depend.
It's like your perfect ratio right there.
Exactly. So if we only track proteins and fats, then it's incredibly easy to manipulate those macronutrients in regards to adjusting our weight. So, and the lever that we want to pull, now let's go back to the 18%, which is protein. Proteins are so important for the body. What people don't understand is that they're incredibly important for metabolism. We need proteins. We need proteins for everything, but including metabolism. Proteins don't just build muscle. Out of all of the amino acids, there are only a handful that actually build muscle. The rest are building everything else in the body. Our DNA and everything is made of these proteins. So proteins are essential. So let's keep protein roughly the same always. And yes, you can manipulate this on protein sparing modified fasting days, or when you go low protein. Let's just call it low protein day. It's easier to say, isn't it? So when we go low protein days, that's fine, because we would have consumed leaner cuts of protein also. We would have consumed other things like organ meats, which were lower in protein, and we would have had days where we wouldn't have consumed anything. So we don't have to be in this fed state constantly, but protein is the most important. So let's keep that as a constant. So what's left? Well, what's left is the fat. So let's pull the fat lever. So if we reduce the amount of dietary fat by even a tiny amount, now the body needs to take energy from somewhere. So if it's not coming from something we're consuming orally, then it's going to take it from stored body fat, which is why it's there. It's there for energy in instances where we don't have any food, and for increase in body fat for the winter, and so on and so forth. So it's taking fat back down to its original purposes. So plain and simply, if we track our macronutrients in regards to proteins and fats, and we need a lever to pull, we generally pull the fat lever. Now, that said, there are groups of people who are under eating. These groups of people need to increase. They need to eat more. But generally, if you are consuming around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, then you should be in a pretty good fed state. Women tend to suffer with this more than men, where they don't consume enough. Women tend to fast for prolonged periods of time, eat once a day, and I don't think that's the best thing for female hormones. I think women should be consuming 2 to 3 meals a day. I think fasting is fine, but I don't think it should be prioritized. I think just being in that metabolic state is more important. Men tend to get away with fasting a lot easier. So we will do better sometimes on 1 meal a day comparative to, to women. But for us, that lever, plain and simply, then just comes back to reducing the fat. Reduce the fat, and then we start to lose the weight. And you can put the fat back in. 2 or 3 days later, you can up the fat again. But for me, so the short answer is, the lever that we want to follow and track, and the lever that we want to pull, is going to be dietary fat.
Very, very good. Dude, I am so torn right now because you've been talking a lot about that lever as you describe it, pulling from dietary fat as being kind of the direction you like to go when it comes to cutting. That's always been the opposite of how I've done things. And so it's been the opposite of what I've taught. It's been the opposite of most of the athletes that I've put on stage. And so I think that my body's ready for something different. And I'm doing it your way this time. So I'm so thrilled about this, man. I just wanted to say one thing on OMAD too. A couple of our ladies replied last time, I guess, with just their thoughts on how much they really love OMAD and kind of swear by it. And so I guess I guess for those listening, what Richard is not saying is that OMAD is bad by any means. There's a lot of health benefits. Both of us would agree that you could get from eating 1 meal a day. And I'm a huge fan, and I do it all the time. And I think most of my clients actually do it. Most of them are 1, 2, 3 meals a day, probably a third, somewhere around there. And we're not saying that there's anything wrong with 1 meal a day. But if you do it for a long period of time and you're forcing it and you want to have the most muscle mass possible and the least amount of body fat possible, I don't think that that's necessarily the best way. You'll live a long, healthy, happy life if you do 1 meal a day the rest of your life. But if you run into any hormonal consequences and you start feeling hungry and like you need to eat 2 or 3 meals a day, then yeah, start breaking it up. Don't feel like you need to force it. That's a
100%.
really, really quick way to have an unhealthy relationship with food, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, yeah, I mean, look, we're all different. Biologically, we're all the same. But I mean, it's in regards to our individual responses. Certainly, I would not put anyone off OMAD who is thriving. But you don't need to force extended fasting. I think
Correct.
some people will listen to a friend who OMAD is working for. They will begin OMAD and then they suffer. Things go wrong. The hair starts to fall out. They begin to feel incredibly lethargic, aches and pains, and so on and so forth. But so if you eat intuitively, and that intuitive way of eating leads you to 1 meal a day and you thrive, then fantastic. Do that. I mix it up. I eat intuitively. So, I've already eaten twice today, and I don't normally eat it at all until, quite late in the evening, but I felt hungry. So I've eaten. So I'll consume 3 meals today. Yesterday, I consumed 2. The day before that was 1, if you can call it that, actually, because the day before that we were doing the live. So I consumed 1 meal within, in fact, it was probably close to 36 hours. And that was fine. I was thriving. So yeah, this is all very much an individual approach. If you're thriving on OMAD, by all means, go to town on it. Fantastic. If you begin to start noticing any problems in regards to lethargy, hair loss, and you think it's hormonal issues, then eat put another meal in. Don't be scared to eat 2 meals a day. Don't be scared to eat 3. You don't have to do OMAD just because your friend Tracy or Diane or whoever is. I don't know anyone called Tracy or Diane, so I don't know where these names are coming from. But just because they just because they're doing it doesn't mean you have to. This is very much an individual approach. So yeah, by all means, I'm not putting down OMAD by any means. It's a fantastic tool. If it's working for you, then fantastic.
Very, very good. Awesome. Does this make sense to you when you were talking about calories in, calories out a few minutes ago? Would that be kind of like saying, I'm going to track my total workout time, meaning the amount of time that I spend doing cardio, the amount of time that I spend doing weight training. that would be a very gross over summary that would be completely useless information. That's kind of where we're at with calories. All right. I love how you said the word endocrines, and I love how you and I loved how much you hit on hormones, because yeah, if I could say in one words why I'm not a fan of calories, it's hormones, for that reason in particular. And so the reason that I like to do that I like to track proteins and fats is because that has more of a direct impact on my hormones, right? And so when we're talking about insulin and we're talking about ketosis, this is kind of more of where our head's at in terms of just like a gross energy deficit and energy surplus. If you're just thinking in terms of energy deficit and energy surplus, you run out of ideas really quick on how to get shredded, right? Especially if you're natural, you always need to be, Richard and I are both natural athletes. We don't use performance enhancing drugs. And so we always need to be thinking really far ahead of the ball in terms of where our hormones are going to be at 4 weeks later in this prep, make sure we don't wreck ourselves. So that's actually why I'm thrilled that our topic for the day is protein sparing modified fast, which is the next question that I'm just going to read off of WhatsApp, actually. This gentleman lives not too far from you, Rich. But he said, he's a client of mine. He says, could you utilize protein sparing modified fasting while still looking to increase muscle mass? You would obviously be reducing your primary fuel source, your dietary fat, by a huge amount, but I understand that you could pull on subcutaneous fat as well. I imagine that muscle breakdown would be reduced due to maintaining protein at around the gram per pound of body weight minimum. I guess my main concern would be fatigue, especially during workouts. I suspect Rich may refer to the increased thermogenic effect of higher protein, resulting in increased weight loss and fat loss. It's just a lack of energy and performance in the gym that could be my biggest concern. I'm not sure if I have a high enough muscle mass at the moment to be carrying around a protein sparing modified fast. LOL. We can discuss that in our next chat. But yeah, man, he looks pretty good. I would say, I don't know, in terms of how he compares to my muscle mass, he probably has like close to my muscle mass from the waist up. I don't know how his legs look, and he's probably about 18% body fat.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, there are many misconceptions in regards to muscle mass. You're not going to lose any muscle mass in a few days. You probably wouldn't lose any in weeks or even months. And the reason I say this is that I had an operation a few years ago that resulted in me being unable to train for 8 to 12 weeks, which is a long time. When I began training again, I began by lifting barbells with no weights on. So it was just the plain barbell. So we're talking 20K, and I was doing any machine weights with no weights on there at all. Within 4 weeks of doing that with no weights, so we're not talking about lifting heavy weights and building muscle again. So if think about it logically, if I had lost muscle mass within that 8 to 12 weeks, then it's going to take me considerably longer to build that muscle back. And I'd need to lift the heavy weights again, and it would be a long, laborious task to get back to where I was. Well, 4 weeks of lifting no weight, basically. My size was back, and 1 or 2 weeks beyond that, I was hitting PBs again. So think of it logically. If I had lost any muscle mass during that time, I would not have been as big or as strong. So what that tells me is, but I did lose size. I lost an awful lot of size. In fact, I had a picture taken. I was speaking at an event. It's the only event that I've ever worn a t-shirt to speak at, because I was clean out of this operation. It was 7 weeks in, possibly. I may be out with the dates, but it's the first time I was able to wear a t-shirt. Because up until then, I had to just wear a vest that wasn't restricting my arm, and or just wear nothing at all. So it was the first time I had a t-shirt on. I had a picture taken, and I'm speaking to these people. In fact, it was about ketones. It was a talk about ketones. And I was talking to people about athletic performance and telling them that, I was, this professional bodybuilder, or I was a pro bodybuilder. And I looked like a scarecrow. I looked at this picture after, and I had, this straight body with two little weedy arms and two little weedy legs. In fact, the jeans that I was wearing were hanging off me, whereas prior to that, they were skin tight. They looked like they were painted on. So I thought that I'd lost a temp of muscle. How can you regain all that muscle that quickly? Well, you can't. We know that it takes a long time to build muscle. And if we are to look at figures, it's around 0.8 pounds per month top end. So there's no way I could have rebuilt that muscle. So what other options are left? Well, it's volume in muscle. What happens when you go to the gym and start lifting weights? You start pumping the blood to that muscle and it becomes bigger. The second you start lifting weights, 5 minutes in, you're big and you're, everything is hard and lumping and bumping and ripped and shredded. There's volume in the muscle. The more you work a muscle, the more nutrients it needs to heal and repair. You're tearing the muscle, you're healing and repair the muscle. So there's more fluid and volume going in there. Whether you're carb or keto, we still replace muscle glycogen. So we've got this muscle glycogen going in while we're training, because this is what the lactate does. The lactate is a substrate for gluconeogenesis, and it creates this glycogen, sends it back to the muscle, arguably at a higher rate than a carb athlete. So we've got glycogen in there. For every 1 gram of glycogen, we can hold 3 to 4 grams of water. And then we've got the salts as well. There's less sodium and potassium in the muscle because we're not using the muscle. There's less fat in the muscle because as a keto carnivore athlete, we store fat in the intracellular myolipids. So all of these things are much less. The volume decreases. And we know this when we look at sarcoplasmic training. This is to do with volume in the muscle over increasing the amount of fiber within the muscle. So we know that we can put volume. And if we look at anabolics, for example, there's an anabolic that I'm sure all of your listeners will be familiar with called Dianabol. Now, Dianabol will make the take an incredibly big...
They better not be familiar with it.
Exactly.
They're one of my competitors.
Exactly. But look, it's, we do work with people who use these substances, and I think some sort of knowledge within that, sector is important. And I don't recommend I don't recommend you use any of these things. There's nothing to be gained by doing these things. But I'm gonna say
except for a lot of muscle, but it's gonna kill you.
Exactly. And look, Dianabol is a perfect example because the taker will become incredibly big very quickly. They'll become incredibly strong very quickly. But what you find is once they come off that anabolic, all of their strength and muscle goes. So what does that mean?
And their libido and their attitude and their motivation for life, man. I've trained guys on both sides of the fence, and they all say the same thing. Your best days when you get on trend is when you're 2 weeks into it, when you're the strongest you've ever been in your life. And then the 2 weeks after it, when you realize that your wife is not cheating on you, the world doesn't hate you, and you're like a normal person after that too. But yeah, man, you talk about the impact that it has on your hormones, man. It's just
it's really not worth it.
Generally speaking, I don't know. There's certainly a wiser way to do it. I don't know. Apparently, it's what they all say, but I've never had any experience with it. And
look, I think
so I just want to throw in my 2 cents worth.
If you were a serious pro bodybuilder and you wanted to be one of the best in the world, and you understood the risks, then that comes part and parcel.
Sure.
And if that's your choice and that's your then that's fine. But for you and I, neither of us are going to be world number one. We're not going to be, we're not Jay Cutler or whoever your favorite bodybuilder is, so it really isn't worth it for the negative effects that it's going to bring on. But anyway, I've gone off on a tangent. The point for saying this is these anabolics will make you big and strong quickly, but once you stop, like Dianabol, everything goes, which means you haven't built any muscle. So where did that strength come from? And the strength comes from the leverage. So we pump more fluid into the muscle, we have more leverage. And this is exactly what I'm saying in regards to when we're not training. We lose the volume, we lose the leverage, we lose the size, we lose the strength. We don't lose muscle. Muscle fiber is incredibly precious in the body. It takes so long to build. The body stores is precious. It's not going to lose the muscle. So coming back to it, this is my short version. This is my short version of telling you how doing protein sparing, modified fasting for a couple of days a week, you're not going to lose any muscle, basically. Okay, so you're not going to lose muscle. Protein builds muscle. You will build more muscle if you consume protein with fat, and we know this. We've discussed it in detail lots of times previously. Protein builds muscle. You can't increase muscle protein synthesis with carb, but you can increase it with a co-ingestion of fat. So we know this, okay? So that's fine. So now we're taking out the fat. So you may be decreasing the body's ability to build muscle, but you're not going to be losing muscle. Now, in regards to energy in the gym, what we eat today is not the fuel that fuels your day. What we consumed days ago is the fuel that you were using. You know, so it's not, you don't eat food now and have energy. That food you've just eaten isn't giving you that energy, unless it's, you know, things like instant carbohydrate things, for example. But in regards to fats and things, this food is going through the digestive system. What you eat now is not fueling your workout. And also remember, we have all of this. We have percentages of stored body fat, which is readily available energy to use on demand. And what you'll find is if you do extended fasting, you may struggle for the first day because you're hungry, but these are just normal hunger signals. Day 2, your energy goes through the roof. And that's because you're burning ketones at a high level and you're burning your body fat. So even a lean athlete at 6% body fat carries around 150,000 kilojoules of energy, and that is 10 times higher than their counterpart at a 6% body fat on carbohydrate. So we have an almost unlimited source of energy. You're not going to feel tired. If you are tired, then you can take an amino blend. Take an amino blend of something like citrulline malate, L-arginine, taurine, MCT. For example, you know, that will give you a boost. Citrulline malate is a potent vasodilator. That means it's going to increase the size of the vessels and blood flow. It's going to pump blood around your body at a much higher rate. It's going to allow you to utilize that energy at a much higher rate. The blend that I use if I'm using amino blend is it is citrulline malate, L-arginine, taurine, MCT, and there may be something else that I can't think of, but it's just an amino blend with it's a non-stim, but you'd be surprised. Beta alanine is the other one. That blend is absolutely incredible. That will get you going regardless of whether you have consumed food or not. But you don't need.
Do you get the ting?
Yes, you do. You do. Some people do. I like the tingles, but some people don't.
I didn't even say it. You knew what I was gonna say. Yeah, I don't even get them, man. I don't know what everybody like. I have to take in an insane amount of beta alanine to get the tingles, but like my wife can't handle it, dude. Just like whatever's in the standard dose of the pre-workouts that we use. I don't know how many grams or whatever it is, but yeah, she just like gets really weird and jittery. And Leo too, my other client, same thing. It just like makes him anxious. I don't know. I love it. I feel like it helps my workouts.
Yeah, it can affect some people who suffer with a number of issues, and we can get into that at a later date. So, I mean, if you are sensitive, then don't take beta alanine. For me, it works really well. I love the feeling. I love that tingly feeling on my face. I don't know why. It just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. But that's the nerves.
That's what she said. I'm sorry. Okay, let's go. I had to. Everybody's thinking it if you're listening. We don't have any kids that listen to this podcast. It's okay.
All good stuff. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But it's I like the feeling. But I mean, there are options. And look, as you know, I have quit coffee, which is something you mentioned earlier. Coffee is a known ergogenic aid, but if you are drinking coffee, then take a coffee before the gym. That is also going to allow you to metabolize fat at a higher rate because it's a fat mobilizer. Drinking coffee before a workout will allow you to burn more fat. It's not a miracle cure, but it will increase the body's ability to do that. But, you know, if you are sensitive to caffeine and acrylamide and mycotoxins, as I am, which I know recently, and as you know, I've removed coffee now, then, you know, that doesn't work for me. But you're not going to... You're an
inspiration to all of us, mate.
And I didn't take any for the 24-hour Carnivoreathon either, which I was well impressed with. I was expecting to, but I didn't.
Wow.
I stayed strong. But look,
Well, see, I never need caffeine as forced energy, right? Would you describe it that way? I
no,
need caffeine when I'm going to do something that I'm like not motivated to do. But like if it's, I don't know, if it's like Carnivoreathon or a podcast or something, like usually I'm just kind of, I'm so passionate
stoked.
about it. It's
Yeah,
like, I don't know, I feel like my energy kind of comes from there naturally. But when it's like
exactly.
a bunch of administrative crap that I have to do, I'm like, oh yeah, all right, we need a couple energy drinks if we're going to pound all this out for the next couple hours.
Yeah. But look, it's so no, I wouldn't describe it as forced energy because caffeine doesn't give
Okay.
you energy. It doesn't give you energy. It blocks the adenosine receptor, which is your body's ability to tell you that you're fatigued and tired. So all we are doing is blocking our body's natural system to tell us you're tired, slow down. So basically, you're borrowing you're borrowing this I don't want to use the term energy now because I've just said it's not energy, but you're forcing this system that isn't there, and you will
Yeah.
always have to pay the piper, whether it's tomorrow, the day after that, or the day after that. You will crash and burn, and I crashed and
You're
burned in
stealing
a big
tomorrow's
way.
energy for today.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you know, at some point, you know, you've got to pay back the bank. There's only so much.
Yep.
There's only so many. Um, it's not deposits. What's the opposite to a deposit? It's there's only so much money you can take from the bank
With
before you need to pay.
withdrawal.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I feel so smart now. I was telling them, I was my wife and our kids and a girl that we're babysitting just all took a trip to the store, and so that we would have a little bit of a quiet place to record. But this girl, I was like, yeah, I'm about to talk to Richard Smith. He's he's about 5 times smarter than me, and so I have to listen to everything he says about 5 times to be able to catch up to it, and then I feel like I'm ready to talk to him again. But I don't know. It just it just kind of boosted my confidence, giving you a word that you
You've
were
just
fumbling around for, because I feel like that never happens.
you've just done me. You've beaten me.
Yeah, that's gonna be my win for the day, bro. We gotta take him where we get him, right?
Hey, there's a short there for sure, isn't it? You know, me doing Richard Smith. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Outwarding Richard Smith. Yeah, it's withdrawals. There's only so many withdrawals you can make before you need to pay the bank back, and rightly so. But it's borrowing tomorrow's energy today, as you say. You know, if that works, but at some point you're going to need to pay the piper. So it's
Yeah.
just bear that in mind. But as you become and then there's other mechanisms in order for energy as well, and you know, electrolytes. Taking adequate electrolytes in the form of sodium, potassium, before you train, magnesium, and possibly even calcium. But you know, I'm not a fan of calcium, which you've seen me mention many times, and we can get into that in another episode if you want. But sodium and potassium in particular, you know, so you may not even feel fatigued. You're not going to lose muscle. There's nothing wrong with protein sparing modified fasting or low protein days. In a simpler there's nothing wrong with low protein days. Sorry, low fat days, I should say. Low fat, not low protein. We keep protein the same, so low fat. So it's there's nothing wrong with going low fat. But it is very much an individual approach. But it's, you know, muscle building will slow down. You won't be maximizing it, but it's still possible. Now, I lost 107 pounds while building muscle. Was it optimal? No, it wasn't optimal, but I still managed to build while burning fat, which we are told is absolutely impossible. But what people don't understand is mTOR and AMPK are always activated. We think of these as being on and off switches, but they're not. It's almost like a seesaw effect. One predominates while the other is less dominant. But they're not on-off switches, you know, and that's important to remember. So you can still build muscle. It isn't optimal for building muscle, but most of your gains will come from your physique, you know, from burning body fat. Losing body fat will give you a better physique quicker than building muscle, because and this is what we do in comp state, isn't it? We strip the fat to show the muscle that we have. And as we take the fat off, the fat comes off the midsection, and it makes our top half look considerably bigger, because now the ratio from the delts, you know, to the hips, is considerably bigger. The lats are popping, the delts are popping, the waist is narrow. Losing weight is always going to give you a better physique than gaining muscle while gaining fat.
Absolutely. You're talking about body recomposition. That's something that I always want to be really careful of to claim, but let me know if you believe this, man. So this is what I just sent out to our newsletter a couple days ago. We always do an athlete spotlight. So for this one, this is Leduar. He's my training partner here that lives in Billings. He's from Brazil. 7 weeks. He didn't know what the carnivore diet was 7 weeks ago. Never heard about it. Just standard American Brazilian diet, right? So weight increased from 161 to 173. So he gained 12 pounds. Skeletal muscle mass, according to the InBody scan, increased from 81.6 to 90.8 pounds. And his percent body fat has decreased from 11.3 to 8.7 pounds. And I didn't even think of this until now. I bet that's mostly, I don't even think he really burned a lot of fat. I think his percent body fat went down because he gained so much muscle over these last 7 weeks.
So look, let's look at that. I mean, this isn't measuring dry protein. So when we measure skeletal muscle mass, this is the skeletal muscle mass that includes fluid. And I know this because I own an InBody machine and I've tested it extensively. So I would, and this was when I was in comp condition. It was just after comp. I put lots of carb in ready for comp day, as I told you about my comp prep. My weight went up. It told me that I gained a stupid amount of muscle over those few days. I clearly didn't gain any muscle. I was like 2% body fat and not even training. But I put volume in the muscle. So it's measuring volume in the muscle. So this isn't to say that he hasn't built muscle, but the one that we want to look at there is dry protein. That's going to give us a better indicator of whether the muscle mass has gone up. If it has, I should imagine it's gone up by, maybe a pound, possibly 2 pound, top end. But that's volume in muscle. But that's fine because that's exactly what we were just saying about this sarcoplasmic effect of volume in the muscle. So it's adding more weight to what we were saying in regards to not increasing muscle fibers, but increasing the volume in the muscle with the training. We can put the fat in the muscle, we can replace the glycogen, water, creatine, monohydrate, another one that I forgot to mention earlier, fantastic tool for adding mass and strength. We're a big lover of creatine, at least I am, especially. But that's an awful lot of muscle to gain in 2 months. So what I'd suggest going back with there is asking what the dry protein is and seeing what the difference is. But look, either way, they are fantastic figures, and it's all, again, proof positive that this lifestyle is the way forward. I bet he looks incredible. I bet his whole body comp is massively improved. And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about, isn't it? Health first. But we do this to feel good about ourselves, and sometimes what we see in the mirror has a massive impact on how we view ourselves. This is why I'm having so much trouble doing the cardio stuff that I'm doing now, the endurance stuff, because I've lost 20k and I'm like, I don't like what I see in the mirror, but I'm trying to prove something in a different arena. Once I feel like I've proved something, I'll come away and maybe I'll go into something else, but something that involves lifting some weights again to put some tidy mass back on. But unfortunately, you can't run fast if you're muscle bound. You can't ride quick on the bike because of the lats and the parachute effect on the bike.
Unless you have a tailwind, then spread those lats, baby. Let's go. fly like an eagle, motherfucker. Cool. Okay, so long story short, he definitely put on muscle, but not 12 pounds of muscle, because that would be impossible unless he got on Dianabol, is what we recommend if that's what you want.
Yeah, but even then, it's volume in muscle. It still wouldn't be muscle mass, So it's but dry protein, go. Let's bounce back. Let's ask what the dry. But either way, these are still fantastic numbers, incredible work, and I'm super impressed. Sure. But this is the power of living carnivore, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's so happy. He's never been able to see his abs like this. He's got veins popping out of him. So
incredible.
Good stuff. Yep. Awesome. next question that we had was from Taylor Shuey in response to our last conversation, which was session number 63. So on his topic, on Richard's topic about BHB, do you think now that it would be good to try pre-workout to get a performance pump and fend off inflammation, and then leaving your body upregulated post-workout for it to create an abundance of natural BHB?
Okay, so are they using a different pre-workout, or are they saying to? I'm guessing they're saying to use the BHB as a pre-workout. That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah,
is that right?
That's what
okay.
he's saying.
Mm-hmm. So look, I use BHB for a pre-workout if I'm going for a very intense workout. I don't use it for pre-workout day to day, and the reason being is, what's our goal when we go into the gym? You know, we want to tear those muscle fibers so we can heal and repair. In order to heal and repair, we need to create some inflammation. Without that inflammation, you know, we're not going to heal and repair as quickly. BHB is a potent inhibitor of NLRP3 inflammasome, which means if we were to take it, we are almost inhibiting our body's ability to be inflamed, which we want, to heal and repair. Yes, we can go beyond the point of diminishing returns, and sometimes, you know, these inflammatory responses are negative, but this is why we train for this inflammatory response in particular. So what I do, if I'm going for a PB in the gym, for example, then, you know, I will BHB up. I'm going in there because I know I'm going to be lifting hard and heavy, and I don't want to be out of action for a couple of days. I want to be at my best. So I'll do that. But that session, I wouldn't say is wasted, but we're not healing as good if we are taking that BHB, because that, yes, we are upregulating the BHB within the body. But my opinion is that, you know, that may be counterintuitive if we do it too often. What I tend to do is, if I have an intense workout, I allow the inflammation for a day or two. And if it's persisting, and I believe, oh, now it's causing problems, because now it's preventing me from training, so now it's causing something that's negative, then I'll use it before I go to bed in order to reduce inflammation while I'm sleeping, to allow me to continue training. So there's no fixed answer for this. Yes, it's an incredible pre-workout, if you're going for big numbers, or for example, every Wednesday I train with one of in fact, he's now the European champion. One of my athletes is the European champion in Ironman, the 70.3, the half Ironman, #1 in Europe. This is the guy that, incredible. And he used to be vegan. He came to me as a vegan, and now he's pretty much carnivore. You know, he still has a little bit of veg, but
well done, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to get him on a podcast. He looks like Clark Kent. So, you know, he looks like Superman. So I call him Clark Kent. That's what he's in my phone as. Incredible athlete. We're going to Kona at the end of this year. We're looking to take the British record, and we're hoping to achieve his full Ironman in less than 9 hours, a sub 9 hour. But anyway, that's a talk for another day. My point is, I train with him on a Wednesday. He is such a machine that I have to take a BHB just to keep up with him, and to fend off all of the inflammatory responses to do with that intense workout. If I don't take a BHB before, then I can't train with him. I can't keep up. I'll try to keep up, and then I'm out of action for days because I've pushed my body to a point where I can't, without using the BHB. So that's when I use BHB now from an endurance perspective, when we do track work, when it's high intensity sprint work. So that's how I would use it. If you want to use a pre-workout around that without the BHB, MCT, use MCT. It doesn't raise ketones as high, but it does do it through the natural process of increasing ketone production. It's a fantastic stable fuel. And then you can also do the amino blend that we just mentioned with citrulline, malate, L-arginine, beta alanine, taurine, and MCT. So that's my opinion on that. I think it'd be so easy for me to say, yes, use an exogenous ketone before every workout and come to me to buy it. But that would be improper of me, because I don't believe that is the best use, of the BHB. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And remind me to talk about this after we're done recording too, but I'm making a note. please send me some of those. And let me know how much I owe you for them. Because for those listening, I've been meaning to get around stocking Rich's electrolytes and his exogenous ketones on our website. As you've probably gathered by the last 45 minutes of us talking, we're both really busy, and there's like other things in our life that take priority over supplementation. But yeah, I'm gonna use these, especially after having spent a lot of time studying what you were talking about on session 63 in terms of how you use those, particularly how you use those exogenous ketones, particularly on show day, not just so that you can hold your poses and so that you can perform well, but mainly because it takes priority over everything. I didn't know that. I didn't know that it takes priority even over sugar and over glycogen, because that's my problem, man. So I'm really encouraged about how I'm going to do this time peaking comparative to last time, because I've just been going back and forth, man. I'm like, okay, if I peak with a high carb approach, I get noticeably bigger, and I get really, really hard and really, really dry in the morning. Great. But it's always a problem because I always spill over. Always, always, always. If my car, I've done this a million times, dude. I've actually done way more competitions with carbs than without carbs as a carnivore. So every single time, man, I peak beautifully in the morning, but I'm just watery as shit later in the day, and I get flat. And so I'm kind of screwed. So I'm thinking that this time around, doing it the way that you teach, and like 5 days out, loading fats first, and then pulling the carb lever, as you describe it, do that next. Take 2 or 3 days. I haven't really decided how many days I want to spend doing it. In the past, I've done it all in 1 day, and I've done it over 3 days. I've spilled over both before, and I don't know, man, it's risky no matter how you do it. And so this way, I feel pretty confident about being able to be able to intentionally spill over like a couple days before, and that'll give all those excess carbohydrates inside my subcutaneous layer time to get cleaned up. And then that would be the time on show day to use that lever and to put those exogenous ketones in, because then you're still just full as fuck. And then all those exogenous ketones is what you're using for energy throughout the rest of the day. So you're not using your carbs for energy. So you shouldn't really go flat, right? Do I kind of understand that correctly?
Spot on. That is my exact way of thinking. Look, I never had the best physique. I was never the biggest. But I seemed to be able to pull all of the right levers for me. And it took me a long time to nail this, but I was always the leanest on stage. I always had the most veins. And sometimes, depending on the comp that you go into, the federation you compete with, sometimes that's not what they're looking for. But that was my strength. So that's what I played to. And I had the ability to become incredibly full because we're highly insulin sensitive. We're highly fat sensitive in regards to storing fat in the muscle. And when you pull all these levers with being incredible vacuum packed, then boom, everything is big, bulky, veiny, ripped, shredded, grainy, and that's
right.
And regardless who I was up against, my physique was unique because nobody else could pull those levers. And I think it's, at sometimes, I didn't even think I was the best on stage, because I think other people looked way better than I did in regards to, muscle size. And in fact, a lot of the guys that I beat were way bigger than me. And if you look at some of the pictures of the guys I've competed against, like one of these guys was over a foot taller than me. If I stood behind him, you wouldn't even know I was there. But when you see us on stage together, I look bigger. I'd look big, and I know that I'm not. He's way bigger. It's just we pull all of these levers, and because of the ratios of the size of the delts to the waist, all of the levers, that I pulled seem to come to fruition on the day.
Wow.
Yeah, I just believe it's a unique process that we have the ability to do and utilize. Others don't, because they're not using this protocol. They're not carnivore. They're highly carb reliant. They're trying to do things from a different perspective. I was never I was never the best. I was never ever the best. But I beat the guys who were the best. Because on the day I managed to pull everything to maximize the way that I could look on stage. And for that one time on stage, it was all there. Prior to that,
That's how you do it, man.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Posing for those that are unfamiliar with bodybuilding, such an underrated aspect of this show. Unless you're beautiful with your posing and you're spectacular with it, usually it doesn't. This is actually one of my favorite Layne Norton quotes. Something that I learned from him, particularly when I started bodybuilding, was that posing can't win you a show, but it can certainly lose you a show. But I don't know, man. There's some times where I've seen someone that is maybe a smaller athlete, or maybe even not as conditioning not as conditioned of an athlete, but you take a guy that's just done an insane amount of cardio to get bone shredded, and like now he can't even hold his poses or whatever on stage. Posing is just extremely underrated.
Yeah, it is. And it was a weakness for me. Posing, I was never the best on stage at posing, but I seemed to be able to show the best of my physique. I was never a flashy poser. I was quite robotic and clean with mine. I was never one of these showy posers who always look incredible, but I knew which poses suited my physique the best. And I would even sort of break and bend the rules ever so slightly on certain poses just to emphasize the fact of the way that I look. There's little things that I would do to make my body look better for me, even though they weren't quite the pose that the judges may be looking for. So you got to play to your strengths. It's a competition, and you've got to pull all of those levers in order to maximize your ability to look best on stage. So you're right. Nothing is clean and simple. You don't just lift weights, get on stage, and then win comps. There's all of these other aspects in regards to looking your best on the day.
Absolutely. When we compete, we play to win, and posing is something that you don't want to be. You don't want to be 2 or 3 weeks out just learning how to pose. That's usually when you start getting brain fog from having that low body fat, and so you want to be working on that early on in your prep. So we got a question from I'm not going to say this gentleman's name, and you'll see why. So he says, you guys mentioned on the podcast that my libido should have gotten better on carnivore. I've actually lost interest in bedroom activity since making the switch to carnivore. My macros are the same. I'm up 8% body fat, and it's no, excuse me. No, he says I'm about 8% body fat. His body fat hasn't changed. About 8% body fat, and it seemed to be fine until switching to carnivore. Any help, guys? So my thoughts are, well, anyway, I'm just wondering if you think this might be because he's still making the transition, and it's probably more of a blood flow issue. So not to be graphic, but I'm wondering if like maybe that. But seriously, I'm wondering if it's affecting his blood flow, and I'm wondering if that's might be why he's having a hard time. So
a hard time, no pun intended.
A soft time, maybe.
No, look, it's there could be a number of issues with this. There's a few ways to look at this. To upregulate ketones usage within the body, there are pathways called the MCTs, the monocarboxylate transporters. These are the same pathways that allow us to utilize hormones. So we're coming from a lifetime of carbohydrate abuse, and I do say abuse because it's dangerous and damaging to the body. And we expect our bodies just to make these transitions in a flick of a finger, or flick of a switch. And it doesn't happen that way. It can take a long time to upregulate the body's ability to do this. So I do believe it's a transition phase. Could it be a blood flow issue? Quite possibly, but then because he said he's lost his libido, I would be inclined to think that it is more than that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Right.
So look, I think it's an adaptation thing. The other thing that I would add to this also is that it could be a copper problem and it could be an iron problem. The reason that I say iron is that iron can reduce zinc absorption from specific sources. It doesn't tend to do it from some sources, but it does through others, depending on whether the zinc is elemental or not. Sorry, the iron is elemental or not. Zinc is important for the production of testosterone. So if we're not absorbing or utilizing zinc to the maximum capacity, then this is going to have an impact on testosterone production. And similarly, when it comes to copper, copper binds with zinc to, and I have to think about this because I can never remember it. There's an enzyme. I think it's metallothionein. Metallothionein. Yeah, I'm sure that's how you say it. This will bind copper and zinc together.
That's my favorite word. Just in case you're struggling with it, let me know if you want help on that one again.
Metallothionein. And what was the one I couldn't say earlier? Withdrawal. Yeah. So
yeah. I can help you out with withdrawal. Whatever that word was. Yeah. No. You're on your own on that one, man.
Oh, fantastic! I love it. I love it. So look, it could be an issue with this as well. If the body, if we're consuming too much copper from one source or the other, then that could lower zinc also. You know, I can't see that the copper being a problem because most of the copper we're going to be consuming is going to be coming from the meat production. But who knows? Maybe you're taking a supplement that is high in iron. Maybe you're taking a supplement that is high in copper. Maybe that is having an impact on the zinc. So look, there's a few levers there. What I would say is that, you know, we need saturated fats in order to create our hormones. Coming back to what hormones are,
yeah,
and what we mentioned earlier,
it's not going to give you cancer if you're, and it's not going. Excuse me, it's not going to give you a heart attack if you're listening. Cholesterol is steroids for natural bodybuilders. It's good for you, especially
exactly.
LDL.
We want cholesterol. Cholesterol is essential for life. But you know, coming back to what we said earlier, proteins and fats. If we look at hormones are either proteins or they're fats. You know, so we need proteins and fats. We don't need carbohydrate.
Right.
So look, I think this will clear up. You know, it may be worth looking at the fat concentration also. You know, I don't think he said there what sort of ratios of fat that he was consuming. I don't think. You know, might be worth increasing the fat concentration. You know, what I would advise is aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Eat the fat that comes with it, i.e., you know, cook the beef in its own juices and eat the fat that comes with it. Eat as nature intended, but don't be restricting the fat. And hopefully, you know, you should start to see an increase. Take a look at any other supplements you're consuming. If there's copper or iron in there, then take those out. You could even think about increasing, you know, zinc. Maybe add in a zinc supplement. Maybe the digestive system in regards to zinc in the gut hasn't been upregulated, and we need zinc to increase the acidity in the gut to metabolize the proteins. So maybe you need a zinc supplement. You know, so a couple of different levers there. But I'm confident if you stick to this lifestyle, things will change. Eggs, a fantastic source of choline. Get some eggs in. Eggs are fantastic. You know, lamb, I'm a big fan of also. If you can do that, as Colt knows. Beef again, but stick with it. There's
to your point on zinc too, all the meats that Rich is describing, everybody, cook them less if this is a particular concern for you. If you want the most zinc, all right, just like generally speaking, the less that you cook your meat, the more bioavailable it is. Be careful. Be really careful where you're getting it sourced, obviously. But I'm just saying the less that you cook, and so I'm not recommending that anybody eat undercooked meat, even though I do. But I'm not recommending that anybody else eats undercooked meat. But the reason that I do it is because I want the bioavailability, particularly in the zinc. You know, I'm getting shredded over these next 8 weeks. So every single bite of food that I eat had better damn well be important. So generally speaking, I advocate less plants and less veg, just like overall, right? Like the less the better. None would be optimal. But if you do have vegetables in your diet, the opposite rules applies. You want to cook the shit out of your vegetables, because that kills most of the fiber, most of the anti-nutrients, the lectins, the stuff that Richard's talking about, gets that garbage out of it. And then the opposite is true with your meats. You want the most nutrients from your meats, particularly zinc. And then one more thought that I had, for you, sir, writing in, thank you for that, would be, how long have you been at 8% body fat? I don't know, man. I just think if you're at 8% body fat, that just might be a level of body fat that, sorry, man, as long as you want to be there, it doesn't matter what diet you're on. It's just eventually your sex drive is going to take a little bit of a hit. So once your body fat gets back up above 10%, I think that would probably help your bedroom activity. But if you're on a mission to get shredded, that might be something that you might, just kind of have to get used to for the time being. But do everything that Richard said to help out the best that you can, and just try to, and just, it's all in those fats, all in those animal fats, and in those minerals that he was just describing. Get as many of them as you can, spread them throughout the day as much as you can, as little plants as you can, and as little processed foods as you can. Your protein should be the foods that he's describing, not protein powder. I love protein powder, but if you want the most going for you, man, that's what we got.
Yeah, spot on. And I think you're right in regards to the fat percentage. The reason that I didn't think that was a problem was because he said he was 80% prior. But we see this with athletes all the time.
Yeah.
When fat percentage gets too low, hormone production starts to shut down. It's particularly prevalent in female competitors, but it does happen to men, So, I mean, 8% is, I'm probably sitting around 9-10% now, and that seems to be a perfect sweet spot for me. If I go lower than that, then I know that, it starts affecting hormone production. So we're all different. There's a few suggestions there. There's plenty to take away. Try implementing them.
And if you're, for sure. Sorry, didn't want to cut you off. I thought you were finished.
Yeah, I was going to say, try implementing them and report back. Come back in a week or two,
yeah,
and let us know how you're getting on, because it's all well and good giving advice, but we like to see the positive outcomes from the advice we give. Otherwise, there's no point.
Yeah. So talk to your wife, your partner, whoever it is that you're trying to impress. So my wife knows that whenever I'm on contest prep, I'm just don't expect anything spectacular. You know what I mean? But like she knows that, and like I explain that to her, and so she like will kind of know that and know how important this competition is to me, and know how important that is for me hormonally if I'm going to get a good night's sleep and everything too. And so she's, I think the more unified that you are in talking about this kind of stuff with your spouse or your significant or whatever, is going to be your best results for having success there.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Samantha Cambeck and David Mensarini both have this same question. Actually, no, they don't have a question. I have a question, because they're doing this, and they're they're no dummies. They're clients, and they're smarter than me. Imagine that. But they're on the carnivore diet, and they're putting in sauerkraut, they're putting in dill pickles, and other fermented foods, and they say that this is helping their digestion, that they feel better. I'm curious if that's something that you ever recommend, or if that you've done. I got pickles in the fridge. I don't know. Should I eat them?
So look, if we look at how nature intended, then, how often would we have eaten fermented veg, through our lifetime? I think it's better. And the reason being is that, most of those phytoalexins and plant toxins have been destroyed. It has been shown to increase alpha diversity in the gut. But what does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of misconception in regards to the gut microbiome. So much we don't know. We're assuming that all of these things are positive pillars, but I did a podcast with Ben Azadi recently, and going all meat increased the alpha diversity in his gut. And he's no joke. He's an elite carnivore.
Whose show was that on?
That was on mine. So that's on my YouTube channel with Ben Azadi. Ben is like,
oh, good.
Yeah, he's.
I'm gonna go find that, listen to it, study it, and I'm gonna put a link in the show notes. So anybody listening, if you want to go listen to this recording, bam, that's where it's at.
So he's removed all veg, and he's a big. He introduced what's called keto flex or keto flexing, which is, he would use certain vegetables and carbs on occasion, and he thinks that this was, the best way forward, and he's had some tremendous success. But the bloods that he did prior to going 90-day carnivore were okay. He was fit and healthy. The alpha diversity in his gut was all right. In order to improve it, the doctor suggested that he increases cruciferous veg and whole grains and so on and so forth. And obviously he was doing the opposite. So he's completely removed all the veg. 90 days later, alpha diversity in his gut has increased. So ergo, we don't need any veg whatsoever at all. Now, the thing when we put these compounds in, it can alter the gut microbiome, but we need to continue to put these in to feed that gut microbe. Once you remove that source that microbe, is consuming, then that gut bacteria dies off. If all of the nutrients come from animal proteins, then it makes sense to feed those microbes, the ones that thrive on the animal proteins, not the ones that thrive on vegetables and fermented foods. The reason that I think this conferred a benefit is I'm guessing these may be fairly new to the lifestyle. Possibly, I'm just guessing. There is an adaptation process. And what we find is adding in, maybe fermented foods along the way helps with this transition rather than going, like a bull at a gate and just making all of these changes, because our gut is used to processing, foods or items from sugary products, from fruits and vegetables. Then if we were to stop these completely, you have a process of die-off where the gut microbiome dies off. It can lead to gastro distress, the inability to process nutrients, digest food. So if we put it back in, it sort of eases that process in a similar way that if we are oxalate detoxing and we put oxalate back in, then it slows down the level of oxalate dumping, and it allows us to cope with it a bit better. So it's a transition period. So I would use that as a tool if it's working. But in regards to the digestion, zinc, we need zinc to increase the acidity within the stomach to process these animal proteins. So we need an acidic environment. We don't want it to be less acidic. We need that zinc in there. So I think if it's working for now, keep it in as a transition, reduce it over time, and I'm sure you'll find that this will transition eventually. And it can take up to 12 months. So, if you're less than 12 months into your journey, then there's still an adaptation process going on. It does take time. It takes time to get used to all of these new mechanisms and pathways.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thanks for that, Rich. By the way, if you hear it, have you heard any cows mooing? Cows.
Have I heard any cows mooing?
Yeah, because there's a bunch of cows mooing like right outside my window. I just want to make sure. I had to I had to go herd cows. I had to go herd some calves mid workout today, bro. My landlord. They're not mine. They're my landlord's. But somebody left a gate open or something, and yeah, I was on the shoulder press, and there's a calf looking at me in the face, and I was like, "We better get this straightened out before the podcast." So, anyway, glad our audio quality is okay.
Yeah, audio is fine.
Covered...
I can't hear any
okay,
cows.
Good.
It's all good.
All right, carry on, cows. So protein-sparing modified fasting. I think we've really just kind of organically covered most of what I wanted to talk about and like answered most of our questions, man. So I just wanted to kind of summarize a couple things and maybe explain to you how my first day today actually is going to be on PSMF. And so is it okay if we talk about like some specific numbers, because I know all of our listeners are going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we've heard all about like everybody's school of thought on what this is, but like if I'm going to do it, like let's talk about some tangible numbers, right? So my macros right now are 205 protein, 30 carb, and 320 fat. I recently increased my protein after studying quite a bit of Rob Goodwin and talking to you a little bit more. I've always had my protein a bit lower in the past, and I've already noticed a little bit of muscle loss, and I've already noticed it hurting my recovery. And so I'm like, fuck this. We're increasing protein by about 15 grams. I don't want that to hurt my prep at all. And so I cut back on my fat from 40 grams because I have a lot to pull from at 360 fat right now and 320 fat. So I went from 360 to 320. I don't have any idea how many calories that is. And obviously we don't care. So So now my macros are 205 protein, 320 fat. So today I was going to increase my protein to 250 protein and drop my carbs down to 10 and increase my fat to 30 grams. Excuse me, decrease my fat to 30 grams. Does that sound pretty typical of like how you would do it?
So are we talking dropping the fat down by 30 grams or to 30 grams? 30
No,
grams to
sorry, 230 grams. Yeah, because Rob Goodwin and the medical sources that I've looked at, everybody seems to recommend 30 grams across the board is like where you want your fats to be. And it's okay to increase your protein, but nobody really seems to know by how much. That seems to be just
perfect.
like go intuitive, and it can depend per person.
Yeah, and I think that is for hormonal production. Although, as Dr. Kiltz mentioned in the live, the body is going to take everything that it needs from stored body fat. But 30 grams of fat sounds good. I think you're going to rip up and shred incredibly quickly. It's going to be interesting to see. Look, in regards to training, also when it comes to prep, the style of my training would change. The weights that I would lift would come down. So I'd lift lighter weights for higher reps just to prevent injury. Obviously, there's less volume now to support. And recovery is, you're not building muscle when you're cutting. This is all about maintenance. So change the type of training as well. Just start lifting lighter weights, concentrate more on eccentric movements, increase the numbers if you wanted to. But this isn't about going in the gym and hitting PBs. This is, in prep, I'd be lifting I was going to say girl weights then, but that's probably a bit sexist. But I mean, it's there's girls out there are a lot stronger than I am, way stronger.
Me too.
I'd go to lifting considerably lighter weights. I'd go back to lifting weights to someone who is new to weightlifting, for example. But the problem with us, because we're men, ego gets in the way, and it's different for you because you train at home. But when you set foot into the gym, you feel the need to be lifting heavy to prove that you're big and strong and manly. And that's where injury happens. Leave your ego at the gym. Nobody cares what you're lifting. It's nobody really, people look over, nobody cares. People are in the gym taking selfies and bloody text messaging. Nobody gives a crap what you're lifting and what you're doing. You just think that they are, so leave your ego at the gym. Switch to lighter weights, higher reps. We don't want to be injuring. Try not to train beyond an hour. 45 minutes, I would preference as being optimal. But we don't want to go too far beyond an hour because this will start to increase cortisol, which will have an impact on insulin. Increased cortisol will burn body fat. So if we increase cortisol, we will lose body fat, and we don't want to be doing that. This is why you shouldn't go running, for example, straight after lifting weights. This is why we don't want, if you're going to go running, we want to split these as 2 different sessions. An hour tops.
Yeah, your body's inflamed. Your body's inflamed at that point. You want that inflammation. That's the one time you do want inflammation is after your workout. Your body's in an anabolic state, and then it can do more with the food that you have. But yeah, that's why you wouldn't want to do cardio immediately after that. Your body has a conflict of interest at that point. Sorry,
spot on. Yeah, spot on. And it's as simple as that. So just think about changing the training. Lift lighter weights. It's leave your ego at the door. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. People are too caught up in their own, self-worth and selfies and text messaging. Nobody cares what you're lifting. And at the end of the day, this is all about you, and health is more important. Consistency is key.
And if you get the aesthetics down, like you look like you can lift heavy weights anyway, and so you don't have to show off, and just everybody can think that you bench 300 pounds like every day.
And that's it. The thing
nobody
is,
nobody has to know that we're just peacocks fluffing our feathers.
Yeah, exactly. But whatever works. And at the end of the day, why are we training? It's to look good. And for health, number one. But we do want to look good. So, it doesn't matter. But anybody who knows anything about training, sees you lifting lighter weights, knows that you're capable of lifting more. They know what type of training you're doing. So
for sure.
just don't worry about it.
Yeah. the people at Yellowstone Fitness think I'm a psycho. I'm lifting the lightest weights in the gym, but I'll be on the same machine for 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm like, all right, like after I've done as many as I can do to concentric failure, I'm gonna stay on it, and I'm gonna do as many partials as I can possibly do. And then when I can't do any more partials, I'm gonna stay there and hold it for another static hold for another 10 or 20 seconds, and I'll do one set of that exercise. Leduar and I both will, and then we'll move on to the next one. So.
Perfect.
So in terms of what I'll actually be eating today, then I was thinking, it looks like, so if I'm going to do 250 protein, 10 carb, and a note on the carb. You say carb, we say carbs. My wife and I were listening to your podcast earlier this morning, and she was cracking up. I love how he says carb. I don't know. It's just one of those language differences. So 250 protein, 10 carb, 30 fat. So my fat is the only fat that I have is going to come from half of it's going to come from 14 grams of butter. And then I'm going to use that to cook 12 ounces of beef liver, and I got 30 ounces of shrimp. So that's 336 grams for your listeners of beef liver and 840 grams of shrimp. And that hits the macros pretty much exactly where they need to be. Does that sound like
Awesome.
pretty good plan?
Yeah, let's go for that. I mean, yeah, the leaner things that I would use when I was, so shrimp would be one. Bassa fish is another one. Incredible.
I did that because of the zinc, actually.
Yeah. Tuna, another good option. You know, even chicken breast, and you can even go for lean beef. But yeah, that sounds perfect. But coming back to what you just said about the carb and carbs, think of how we don't say proteins and we don't say fats, but then we say carbs. You know, so
touche.
Protein, fat, and carb.
That's so funny. Yeah, I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now, and I've just never thought of it that way before. But what you said makes so much sense. It says protein, carbs, fat. Yeah. Now I feel like a dumbass. Oh man. Okay. Yes. And so, I guess one more thing on heavy lifting. Robert Sykes is somebody that I know lifts heavy like throughout his prep, and so he's not a fan particularly of protein sparing modified fast, but he's done it, and so his experience from the interview that I was just listening to was that his best advice is to make sure that you're lifting heavy. And so I would say get your heavy lifts in like occasionally and do them, but don't go crazy heavy on the volume. So like in bulking season, you're doing 5 sets of a heavy exercise. Okay, when you're cutting, you do 1 set of that exercise, and everything else is mostly isolation. You're doing high reps. You're getting your mind inside the muscle. That's kind of how I train. Am I on the right track?
Yeah,
man?
look, there's obviously, you know, when we look at ourselves and Robert Sykes and whoever else is in this industry in regards to carnivore bodybuilding, you know, what we're doing is completely different to everybody else. So we're all on the same page. We all agree that this is the way forward. You know, techniques in regards to macro ratio, utilization is going to differ from everybody. And it's whatever works. I know that Robert likes a long, slow cut. I like to do it in 6 to 10 weeks. You know, I don't want to be taking months to cut, because the longer you cut in, the less time you are building. You know, you're not building when you cut into that degree. So for me, it's about as quick as prep as possible, and then get back to building. And I think if you are consuming high levels of fat, this is going to allow you more leverage, more cushion, more protection on the heavy lifts. If you're depleting the fat, which is what we're trying to do, then you're going to have less cushion, less lubrication, and you're more prone to injury. So I don't do any heavy lifting in prep at all. It all goes light, and it does work wonders. And look, to put this into perspective, at 75K, my bench was 165K. And I can work this into pounds if you want, if that's easier for you. In fact, let's do that now. I'm gonna work. You guys work.
Okay, good.
So I mean, it's.
I was gonna say then I'll be tracking with you a little bit better.
So 165K is 363-pound bench, and this was weighing 75 kilograms, or 75 in pounds. Is 165 pound. So I was lifting 200 pounds more than my body weight, doing it this way. My squat was my weakest, and that was 418 pounds. And my deadlift was 506 pounds at 75k.
Wow.
So, when you factor in, the weight of being 75k, which again, just to reiterate, is 165 pounds, those are quite big lifts. There's not many people who are not considerably bigger who would lift heavier than that. And doing this protocol allowed me to get to that point. And I wasn't strong prior to any of this. When I left school, I was a string bean. Before I became clinically obese, I was incredibly lean, but skinny and feeble. I had no strength, no muscle mass. So building muscle doesn't come easy to me. My myostatin levels are naturally high, which means I struggle to build muscle. So I've done this against the grain. And that's the protocol that worked best for me. Obviously, Robert's got a different protocol, and I completely respect that. Robert is, one of the biggest influences within our space, and he's a friend of mine. I consider him a friend.
I mean, it works. It works. Yeah,
it works. Yeah,
it's the best results I've ever gotten on a prep. But I mean, when it comes coming back to his macronutrient approach, though, it's just that most of my competitors and me have kind of already been there, done that, and so that's kind of why I'm just kind of focusing a bit more on your training methodology and how you do your macros, and wanting to work some of these protein sparing modified fasting, because at the end of the day, it's just like kind of to summarize it again, what we were talking about with OMAD is that it's great. 1 meal a day is awesome. Having higher protein and lower fat, that's great too. Having higher fat and lower protein, that's great too. But if you've done the same thing a lot over and over again, eventually your body is used to it. And especially if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you always got to be thinking ahead, like, all right, what has my body not seen before? This. Wow, this fits perfectly within my dietary lifestyle. Like I can do this. The shrimp that we bought wasn't too expensive, and the calf liver that we got wasn't too expensive either. We just get it down the road, and so I find that organ meats are usually pretty cheap in general. Most people just don't want them.
Yeah, spot on. But yeah, you're completely right. You've tried it one way. Let's try it another. Let's see what happens. Maybe the other way would work best for you. But it's always good to try new things, and I think it's that's the key to success, isn't it? Trying different variations and seeing what works best. But it'll be interesting to see how you get on. I'm super excited to see where you are in a couple of weeks.
Definitely. Thanks, man. I just tagged you in some in my progress pictures, and so I got and so I'm like, all right, I took like a good posing routine today. I got a good picture of like every single pose, and so a couple weeks I'll just keep doing that, and that'll be, I don't test my body fat percentage. I've tested as low as 1%, and I'm like, wow, like apparently none of these machines work on me, and so I just kind of gave up on that. I don't know. I'm certainly under 10% right now, so. I'm thinking that I'll just keep riding these macros out until my body weight gets down to $182. That'll be 2 weeks out. And then I was going to do 2 of these days a week, and two high protein days a week, and 5 high fat days a week, with most of my training being on those high fat days, which are what my normal macros are. Am I understanding this and doing this correctly? So I'm probably going to hit like 8 or 10 total high protein days within the next few weeks, for the next 6 weeks, to put me at 2 weeks out.
Yeah, and look, we can play. This is very much an intuitive process. Also, if you feel like nothing's shifting by next week, then we can do more lean days. So it has to be intuitive also. But then, a week prior, we want to deplete all the fat that we can. So you want to do a number of days consecutively to deplete all the intracellular myolipids. We want to deplete as much fat as we can before we refeed. And that's
cool.
That's
so we'll probably start doing start doing some more of those towards the 2 week out mark, and then that's going to be basically what depletes me. And then peak week is when we do a fat load, then a carb load, then the exogenous ketones on show day.
Yeah, spot on.
In terms of water and electrolytes, just keep everything intuitive between now and 2 weeks out, and then maybe start getting.
Yeah, and then, coming close to 2 weeks, we'll start looking at water and electrolytes. Again, we want to deplete everything. The last 2 weeks are going to be tough. But look, it's if you want to be number one, this is what it takes.
Yeah, that's the goal. Well, and here again, I'm not competing at this show. I'm guest posing. And so if I screw up my physique, whatever, like I wasn't going for a pro card anyway. If I nail this show, which I plan on doing, then I think I might take a stab at a pro card 6 weeks later. There's a show I'd like to do with David Menzarini, actually. It'd be fun to do one together with him. But yeah, we'd like to both get our WNBF pro cards. But for me, it depends on finances, family. We're going to be starting school around then. And the whole family kind of has to be on board if dad goes into a bodybuilding contest prep, because sometimes I need like lots of rest and I'm not really myself and aren't really thinking clearly on peak week, if we're going to be honest. I'm sure you know the feeling.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Wonderful. That is everything that I had to, that is everything, everybody's questions that were pressing, man. You know what? You probably need to go get some sleep, huh?
Awesome. Been a pleasure as always, my man. Some great questions there. But yeah, looking forward to seeing your progress and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you again, bro, for everything. Absolutely. We'll be checking in again real soon. Pleasure as always. And please get some good rest, man. You earned it for sure. You're the man.
Cheers, bud. Take care, man.
Cheers. And on that note, we're going to call it a wrap for this week, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. Make sure to let us know what you thought. Feel free to shoot either Rich or myself an email. That is rich@theketopro.com or colt@supersetyourlife.com. You can send us a DM on Instagram. I am @ColtMilton, and Rich is @RichardAnthonySmith. We both offer private one-on-one nutrition consultations and monthly coaching services for those who are serious about getting some real results. First call, if you've never booked one with either of us, is always free. If you're one of our listeners, we would love to hear your story, answer your questions, and help you out in any way possible. Carnivore coaching has been a cause worth dedicating our lives to. It's who we are, and we'd be honored to help you experience what this lifestyle has done for us, our families, and our clients. Thanks everybody who's been subscribed and listening since the very beginning. And for those who have recently joined, your ratings, your reviews, your shares got us to where we are at. And we're very, very grateful. So that's all we have to say until next week, everybody. Until then, check out Richard's Keto Pro podcast, specifically the one that we were just talking about like an hour ago. So I'll plug that one in the show notes again. All right. I haven't forgot that. Rich and his guests teach how to improve their health and well-being using a ketogenic diet. Like this show, Richard frequently features popular guests such as Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Jen Unwin, many others. And then my workout podcast is called the supersetyourlife.com podcast. I publish every single Monday and every single Friday, and I specifically record it with professional bodybuilders and judges and top nutritionists, leadership experts, stand-up comedians. We've been having lots of carnivores over there too lately, top athletes from supersetyourlife.com, and we try to keep the focus on health first, bodybuilding, faith, and family over there. Share this with a friend if you found it helpful, everybody. And we'll catch you next week on session number 66. Not order 66. If you're a Star Wars fan, then you get my reference. If not, then sorry. But we'll catch you next week on session number 66, everybody. Until then, say this with us. Eat like a lion. Live like a lion. Love you guys and have a good week until then.